This comes from chapter 10. All right, so we're going to begin. This is actually section 10A, and we are going to begin on page 193. All right? Now, what is an animal? Well, first of all, we've already talked about briefly, or you read about, a zoologist is a scientist who studies animals. Okay? Now, all animals have certain characteristics. Animals are made of many eukaryotic cells. Animals are consumers. What are consumers?
They eat other things.
Okay, yes.
They eat other organisms.
Yes. Okay, most animals have specialized cells that are organized into tissues, organs, and systems. We've talked about that before, I think, but anyway. And then most animals can move during at least part of their lives. These are some characteristics of animals. Okay? And if you need to abbreviate as you are taking. Again, most animals eat their food rather than absorbing, and then most animals reproduce sexually. Now let's talk about characteristics. So guys, symmetry. Symmetry can be divided by one or more imaginary lines into mirrored image halves. Okay? Now, when you look in a mirror, you see your reflection, right?
Yes.
Okay, so when they're divided into exact halves. They're like mirrored back and forth, or parts. It depends on what symmetry that is used. A bilateral, let me just flip over here. I just want to know how far I needed to get here. So a bilateral symmetry, and again, this is coming from page 194, just in case you need to know that and you want to follow along. But a bilateral symmetry, for example, is a crab. A crab has a bilateral symmetry, and a line can be drawn into two halves, and they look alike. Heaven help me, I cannot draw it well. Let me just try. Well, look at the picture at the top of the page. You have a crab. Everybody see that picture on the top of the page?
Yes. It's a quite weird looking crab. It's blue. Does that mean it's cold or it's sad?
Okay, so imagine that you have a symmetry line going straight down the middle. Technically, both sides would look the exact same. So it's a mirror image of that, okay? You don't have to draw that. That was free. We'll just definitely erase that pretty little image. Moving on. So that is like a midline symmetry. It goes straight down the middle. And sometimes this is referred to as a midline symmetry. Typically, I think in our textbooks, we've always heard of it as a bilateral symmetry. Now, radial symmetry. Radial symmetry is basically, they say to think of it as a bicycle wheel. First of all, an example is a starfish. Of radial symmetry. And so think about like something that radiates around in a circle, and basically that's what you see it is. They're starting at a center point, and then you have lines of symmetry this way, that way, that way, that way, that way, but you have a center point. It's called like a hub, and the crab is divided like this way, this way, this way, okay? So it's radiating, is not just it's not divided into 2 or 3, it's divided into more, okay?
Yay!
Sort of like a bicycle, okay? And then asymmetry. What is asymmetry?
Not symmetrical at all?
Okay. It's the lack of having, yes, basically it's a lack of having a mirror halves is called a symmetry. And you can look at the tube sponges there is an example. You cannot divide a tube sponge into a perfect symmetry. Okay? We'll come back. Okay. All right. Now, let's talk about on page 195, the head, cephalization. So most animals have sensory organs and brain clusters at one end of the body, which is the head. Okay? And that's the sense organs and the brain are clustered at one end of the body. That's cephalization. Okay? And basically, our textbook tells us that having those sense organs together at one end of the body helps an animal determine like their direction and that sensory clues such as light, sound, those type of things, where they're coming from. And you see this cute little, I think it's a aardvark, right? I think it's an aardvark.
Yeah,
An aardvark,
sure,
yeah.
aardvark.
All right, so then we're going to talk about guts and body cavities. And as the textbook says, sometimes when you hear the words gut or guts, it brings an unpleasant sound or smell to your mind. But that's actually just, but it's actually a science term. An animal gut is the digestive tract. And it's the part of its body that takes food.
Guts only give the word guts only gives me like.
For example, complete guts is when digestive tracts has two openings, okay? So most of the animals you are familiar with, like the aardvark, have complete guts. The digestive tract has two openings. Food enters through the mouth, one end, and is digested and expelled through the other end of the tract. You can see the picture there. I don't really need to tell you anymore. Then you have an incomplete, I think it's on the next page, we'll talk about it, which are planarians. And that's because it has only one opening. Basically, the food and the digestion releases and goes in the same place.
That's just nasty.
Okay?
Yeah, it sounds nasty.
Everybody got that?
I have a thought, but I'm not gonna say it because it's everybody else.
All right, let's an aardvark and a planarian, their food goes in here, it digests here in this little gut area, and it comes out there. Okay? Food comes here, it does its thing, and it comes back out the same place in a planarian. And that is called an incomplete. Because it has one opening. Okay?
It eats
Okay. Shh, shh, shh.
Does it have a mouth?
Well, that's where it gets its food from, is there. It goes in. There's a place for it to go in. We'll have to look at pictures on that later.
Ugh.
Let's talk about a notochord, which is on page 196, which is, it's when basically there's a presence of a flexible rod. That flexible rod is called a notochord. And that can be present at any time of the animal's life. Like some can outgrow that. Anyway, animals that have that structure are called chordates. chordates. So that's animals with. And it may say it on the next page, but okay? Animals with. So
I have a thought that is going to disturb everyone.
okay, well, let's stay focused. We only have about, yep, it does, 4 minutes, and I want to try to get through this. So, the presence of a backbone. So, chordates are animals that have a notochord, which is the small, flexible rod. So, in most chordates, the notochord develops into a backbone. So, it typically will start as that flexible rod, and as it grows and develops into a full backbone. Then you guys know what vertebrates and invertebrates are. Vertebrates are animals that have backbones or vertebrae that protect the animal's spinal column, and then Invertebrates are animals that never have a notochord. They never have a backbone. No backbone animals. You guys know those.
Wait, do we have the cord and then they go and make our backbone?
No, we have a backbone.
No, Bear, we don't have a backbone. That's how we stand. We don't have a backbone.
Shh, shh, shh.